Now, one of the issues that are being discussed right now is really about the use of artificial intelligence in the learning institutions for your education, because there are a lot of ethical considerations, the issues of plagiarism. Is it making students lazy? Well, the purpose of this video really is not really for me to start discussing those ethical issues, even though I find them interesting and something that all of us should be engaged in. But the thing which I want to talk about is really for those who are very intentional about using artificial intelligence to really help them meet their learning objectives, not to use artificial intelligence to replace their learning, but to actually use it to learn much faster and be competent at what they learn. This video is actually for you, because I'm going to be sharing 3 practical ways in which you can use artificial intelligence to better your own learning objectives. And so if that's something that you think is very much interesting, just stick around. Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Now if you're new here, hi, my name is Simon. I'm a 5th year medical student at the University of Zambia, and on this channel I really share about my own experiences, ways that you can help yourself learn better, ways that you can help yourself be more efficient at your work in all the fields of productivity. And before I go into the lesson, I would just like to mention that in case you haven't seen the video that I made before this one about the use of artificial intelligence for your own learning, I would advise you to check that out also. And again, let me just emphasize that when I say artificial intelligence, what I actually mean is the large language models like ChatGPT, which is generative AI for your learning, considering that artificial intelligence is quite a broad term. So the first practical ways that I think you can use artificial intelligence to make sure that you're learning quickly is to simplify things and build logic. Now, one of the things which I had actually mentioned in the previous video is that unless you really know how to learn effectively yourself, you will not be able to use artificial intelligence, at least to the best ways that it is able to help you. Now, the thing that you have to understand is the way a human being learns, you attach new information to prior knowledge. That is the reason as to why most of the times when you are being taught everything, you always start from basics, because complex things can only be built on basics. Now, that can actually apply even to a topic. So when you are studying a topic, it does not make sense, or it will actually be very much taxing on your working memory. The cognitive load is going to be very high if you dive deep into the details and everything. It is always better to start with a very basic knowledge schema, a logic layer which is able to help you understand things very, very well. Now, with artificial intelligence, because of its power to analyze and evaluate, it is actually able to help you do that very quickly. One of the examples which I can give, let's say for example, I'm studying the topic anxiety disorders in my psychiatry rotation, right? Instead of me just going in directly looking at the DSM-5 and looking at all the criteria and everything, the first thing that I may just want is I would just want to get the logic behind these conditions. So maybe I may type in, which is actually a prompt, which you need to know how to put a very proper prompt. Maybe I may just type in and say, explain how a professor of psychiatry would be able to give the logical basis of anxiety disorders in psychiatry to a 15-year-old. Now, just from this prompt, one of the things that you're able to pick up is that, first of all, I gave artificial intelligence a role. ChatGPT, I gave it a role as a professor in psychiatry. So it is going to be speaking to you with this level of expertise. But I talked about this is a professor talking to a 15-year-old. Already, when I just say 15-year-old, already ChatGPT is thinking, okay, 15-year-old probably in high school, or you could say a high school student, by the way. But by doing this, it is going to simplify the information and it is going to use very basic terms for you. Now, that first logic layer is very important. The knowledge, the way it is going to be presented, is not the way I would write it in my answers. But trust me, by trying to jump straight into all the different terminologies that I may not be able to understand, it will just take time for me to learn. But if I'm able to understand it the most simplest way, when I come to the complex structures, it's like I'm just adding that to everything. Now, I'm going to tell you that sometimes there are very big jumps in terms of how you're learning things. For example, if you know nothing about psychiatry, if you know very little about, mental health conditions, some of the terms that are going to be used, you will not be able to understand, and it will take time until you get a hang, of everything. But just by typing in that one, it is going to explain things in the most basic way, in such a way that I'm able to understand. And then when I go to the books, which are really packed with a lot of terminologies and everything, I'm going to find myself actually gliding through that information much, much faster. And I have tried this personally. You should also try it. You see, it will actually help you a lot. The other practical way that you can use artificial intelligence is to actually test your hypothesis. Now, one of the things, again, I'll go back to the fact that I'm using my knowledge about how efficient learning looks like, even on the cognitive level. And so if you're not very conversant with that, I would also advise you to watch my other videos. The basic principle here is that usually the way a person learns is you create hypotheses. The brain does not like to be in suspense. Whenever you see anything, even if you see a word that you've never seen in your life, just by looking at the word, you're able to come up with a hypothesis. Maybe this means this, or maybe this concept is like this, maybe this is like this. And that is a hypothesis. And actually learning happens by you proving your hypothesis either correct or wrong. It does not matter whether your hypothesis was correct or whether your hypothesis was wrong, but it is that hypercorrectional effect that actually helps you to learn better. So now what I mean by this is, usually when you are learning, most of the times the way you are going to help yourself engage yourself very much is by generating information from your brain, thinking about things yourself before you allow information to come and put things for you. So one of the examples which I can give, I'm still going to use the same example of the same example that I gave about I'm learning about anxiety disorders. If I've learned fairly enough, I can make a hypothesis. Okay, from what I have learned, if let's say for example I was the first person discovering how to manage these conditions, how would I manage them with just the information that I have? And then I can just feed it into ChatGPT and say, from the little information that I have about anxiety disorders, this is how I would go about managing the conditions in a patient, or this is how I would go about diagnosing the condition in a patient. You type in everything that you're thinking in your hypothesis, and then after that you just give it the instruction and say, analyze, evaluate, and scrutinize this management based on the guidelines that we have on whatever. It is going to analyze that for you, and you're going to be seeing where you were thinking wrongly, and that hypercorrection effect, trust me, it's going to do wonders for you. That hypercorrection effect is going to help you learn better. So by testing your hypothesis with ChatGPT in a way that it is going to give you feedback the way a person is evaluating. Now, you can test your hypothesis with the book, and you must do both. When you think about, okay, this is how I would manage, you might as well just go on the management chapter and start reading what how it is managed, and then you can be looking back and forth. Do that. That is actually good. But the thing with artificial intelligence is the case that it will give you feedback about what you are correct about, what you are wrong. It is going to tell you which lines of thought are actually possible research areas. Like it's able to tell you this looks like a logical way of managing, only that it has not been demonstrated. So at least when you look at that, you're not thinking this is just wrong. You're thinking, okay, this is something that could actually be true, only that it has not yet been demonstrated empirically. It has not been shown with clinical trials. And so what if maybe we can actually do a research on it? So by doing that, you are engaging with artificial intelligence in such a way that your learning is actually very much meaningful. And from this, really, if you cannot see how well you can use artificial intelligence to better your own learning, then I don't know what. The last practical way that I'm going to share with you in a way that you can use artificial intelligence is to explore relationships. Now, the concept about relationships is that knowledge does not exist in isolation. Knowledge is really interconnected. Even things that you think are not very much interconnected are very much connected. And most of the times, these things are taught separately for the sake of you to be able to learn them. Let's say, for example, we talk about the human body. The reason as to why we separate the systems into the cardiovascular system, the digestive system, and then the renal, and then the CNS. The reason as to why it's separated like that is so that we are able to learn it well. But really, when you think about it, the relationship that exists between the nervous system and the cardiovascular system is very intimate, to the level that you learning the cardiovascular system and the CNS system in isolation actually takes away a bit of you bringing those things together, until after you learn this, you're able to bring those two things together. And the person who is able to connect those two systems in their knowledge is the one who is able to apply things better, because you can treat cardiovascular conditions by having drugs that affect it on the level of its relationship with what? With the CNS system. For example, beta blockers. Really, it's about how the effect of the central nervous system on the heart. And let's say, just for example, even within one system, for example, like the central nervous system, when you look at the brain is very much interconnected. It is separated into systems which are quite arbitrary. It can be anatomical, functional, even in neurotransmitters. And this separation is just there so that it can make sense to discuss it, because you cannot discuss things which are mumbo jumbo. You separate it into a limbic system, and then you separate it into, okay, it has got this, prefrontal, whatever. But really, all of these things are very much interconnected. So you, when you are learning, you want to learn things separately in a way that it is going to help you, but you want to try your best to merge them as much as they make sense. Now, ChatGPT can help you with that. Sometimes these relationships are not very apparent, and so you can explore them using artificial intelligence. So when you're learning things and you have got these concepts which you don't really seem to find the relationship between the two of them, you can just ask the question, what is the relationship between this concept and this concept, and see what ChatGPT says. And when you do that, you can able to explore other forms of relationships. Yeah, so that was the last thing which I wanted to share with you. And if you think this was very much helpful, there is good news, because I'm going to be making another video, and the other video is going to help you how you can actually revise, because most of these things have been on ways that can help you as you're learning your information for the first time. You can use them for revision, but I'm going to make another video giving you practical tips about how you can use artificial intelligence to revise the information that you have already learned in the first place. So if that's something that you would want to see, then you might as well share, subscribe, and like this video, even as you wait for the coming video. All right, guys, that's it for today. See you next time.